In this video, we will be discussing the main key factors that determine new urbanism. These include community building, the concepts of neighborhood without sprawl and nostalgic, small and ecological and walkable, lively and safe, with mixed uses of land and heterogeneous populations, with developed public space. The first one, the social aspect, community building. Certain architectural and urbanistic solutions directly influence people's behavior. Interactions among inhabitants as well as a sense of community might be strengthened by a proper organization of space. Through proper spatial planning, a local community can be created, which is manifested in a sense of community and the communal spirit of its inhabitants. It is assumed here that the variables related to spatial environment influence the frequency and the quality of social contacts, and that increased frequency of interactions among people fosters the development of social ties. The creation and the functioning of communities can be stimulated by passive social contact and by the physical proximity of people. Therefore, a space should be designed in a specific way to make such contacts possible. Several studies found a significantly higher sense of community in those areas with new urbanist characteristics. Numerous research shows that the relation between physical elements of people's environment, such as the arrangement of windows and doors in residential buildings, the accessibility of a particular place and how easy or difficult it is to be reached, the presence of common spaces, and etc., do strengthen the ties among the inhabitants. Other studies look for environmental factors such as proper utilization of a public space, shopping facilities, outdoor public meeting space, and so on, which are positively correlated with aspects of the sense of community, for example, the sense of security. Now, the concept of neighborhood without sprawl and nostalgic. This concept is presented by new urbanists beginning with their critique of urban sprawl. Urban sprawl means urbanistic phenomenon in urban and suburban areas characterized by low-density housing and widely spread out developments. In many American and European cities, this sprawl is fostered by zoning regulations which require the separation of commercial, industrial, and residential districts. By such separation, zoning was supposed to improve the quality of life because of health and safety issues. However, what started as a noble intention to protect the health of citizens in the urban environment may have done just the opposite by fostering the sprawling pattern of today's cities. Although spread out developments have some benefits of inhabitants, for example, owning a plot of land, privacy, perceived safety, abundant free parking, they also bring out many negative consequences. The sprawl often leads to environmental destruction and pollution, to the loss of nature and agricultural areas, as well as to the homogeneity of suburbs, which all begin to look the same. The development of the suburbs also leads to the spatial segregation of inhabitants, usually based on race and income, and therefore generates a concentration of poverty. The racial, ethnic, and class considerations existed before derivable suburbanism appeared on the scene, but not to the extent possible in the late 20th century. The sprawl also causes people's excessive dependence on their cars, exclusion of non-drivers from society, and the separation of inhabitants from active communal life. Houses are spaced out, inhibiting the development of neighborhood relations. Anonymous direct contacts all weakens the neighborhood community. New urbanism is also referred to as traditional neighborhood design or neo-traditional design, making references to the past and valuing the nostalgic elements and the romantic character of old towns, example, picket fences, front porches. Adherent to the NU claim to specific architectural styles and are especially inspired by the small towns, local history is considered to be in town layouts and the colors used for buildings, landscape and environment design, and place and street and names. Individualization of housing projects within certain parameters is suggested to avoid the creation of almost identical suburbs. The next thing is small, ecological, and walkable. The small scale of neighborhood community is crucial for its renewal. It helps to naturally create a clearly defined center and the boundaries of a community. When the small scale is connected with growing density of housing, the frequency of direct relations among people also increases. High density of housing has an environmental aspect. It limits the spread of built-up areas and reduces people's reliance on their cars. This emphasizes such environmental benefits of new urbanist developments. when we have walkable urban places that are far more environmentally sustainable, since the number of cars required per household and the number of miles substantially reduced. The concept of new urbanism is therefore based on the idea of an urban village, a compact, self-sustaining neighborhood where people can walk or bike everywhere without cars. When possible, most streets should be narrow and cater toward the safety of the pedestrian. The preferred street pattern is a grid system, with short blocks implying that parking spaces are hidden from view, and interconnected networks of streets allow permeability and promote social interactions. New urbanism is being described nowadays as walkable urbanism. One should be able to satisfy most everyday needs within walking distance or transit of one's home. Walking distance is generally defined as a 1,500 to 3,000 foot radius, a quarter to half a mile, which is normally 0.5 to 1 kilometer. Which means densities must be relatively high to have all of these options available and close by, encouraging transit ridership. New urbanism proposes maximizing access to public transport. Therefore, new urbanist projects should be organized around public transportation hubs. The concepts of pedestrian pocket on the neighborhood scale and transportation-oriented designs on regional scale are important for movement. The next one is lively and safe. The inhabitants of such neighborhoods and villages are encouraged to enter social relations by the proper design of space. This should invite them to leave their private spaces readily, to enter the public space, and to initiate contacts with their neighborhoods. This is connected with the shrinking of private sphere. Houses are built close to one another and near to the streets. Porches face the streets. Buildings are constructed around yards and near the streets, with their windows placed low and directed towards the streets, overlooking the public areas. Such solutions increase the level of social control and neighborhood supervision over the streets, which enhances safety. In order to discourage crime, a street space must be watched over by buildings with doors and windows facing it. Walls, fences, and padlocks are less effective at determining crime than a simple lit window. Such natural surveillance is referred to as eyes on the streets. Therefore, new urbanist projects are supposed to make strangers feel noticed and potentially unwelcome. With mixed uses of land and heterogeneous populations. Another important principle of new urbanism is mixed land use within neighborhoods and interaction of different places. Higher density developments is more efficient for a developer since every market segment can be served through the construction of single mixed-use area, thus limiting the infrastructure. Subsequently, high-density neighborhoods include starter, move-up, family, and retirement-style homes. Places of work and leisure and shopping areas should be located close to houses and apartment buildings. Proximity of all types of infrastructure and the development of public transportation limit inhabitants' use of cars. The development of services and local shops leads more and more people to work close to their place of residence. The closeness of all kinds of public institutions and offices also influences the strengthening of local community. Different types of buildings with different prices, quality standards, and forms of property should be constructed within the same community so that groups of different socio-economic characteristics live close to one another. A mixture of housing types encourages random personal contact between people of different social classes. This creates an internal, heterogeneous neighborhoods community and fosters the integration of social groups of different incomes, ages, and races. Therefore, architectural and urbanistic differentiation should lead to the differentiation of communities, preventing the creation of homogeneous and enclosed enclaves. The last one is with developed public space. Within new urbanist developments, special importance should be attributed to public space. Its revitalization is seen as a condition for revival of communities. Public space facilities are created in places where people meet informally. Traditionally, these facilities have included streets, sidewalks, parks, public squares, and plazas where people have routine access and practice free communication as part of everyday life. Civic spaces encourage civic engagement in general. The community halls, libraries, and schools are places for civic engagement and education. Arts and museums are educational in nature, and they nurture civic spirit. Public space is crucial for community building because it influences the development of informal ties. Places where people gather become the heat of community. Different forms of public space can become the community symbols and ensure the feeling of connection within a place. Therefore, the proper arrangement of such places, fostering their utilization, is of crucial importance here. In the concept of new urbanism, streets also have a social character. They should be built in a way that encourages street life, increasing the activities of pedestrians, fosters the communal ties and emotional relations with a particular place. And it points out that even though that there is a large amount of data on car traffic and traffic policies in cities, this is not accompanied by a data collection referring to pedestrians. The users of the city are often overlooked. Therefore, if lively, attractive, and safe cities with active streets, squares, and parks are to be realized in the 21st century, then good provision for pedestrian activities is vital. One extra point is to make sure that when we design, we also design for water collection. Water collection is called the urban drainage. Urban drainage means that we are collecting all of the water within our streets and in a safe way and give that space. So these are the different principles of new urbanism.